6 months can bury a man, or reveal who he truly is. Most realize it too late. They keep operating on autopilot, trying to fix a life they never consciously chose. New job, new city, new people, but the same patterns follow, because the problem was never the sceneries, it was the center. And the most brutal part, everything still seems to work. The world applauds your performance, but deep down, something is dying. Slowly, quietly. You've felt it, that sense of being physically present but emotionally absent, of living without inhabiting your own body. That's not weakness, that's rupture. And if you don't act, it turns into a sentence. In this video, you'll understand how this 6-month process can dismantle the character you built to survive and make space for the man you were actually meant to become. Step by step, we'll walk through each stage, the collapse, the shadow, the isolation, the point of no return, until something is born that no one else can give you. Only you can deliver it. And it's going to hurt. In the first 2 months, what you expect doesn't happen. There's no glorious awakening, no sudden leap in consciousness. It's the opposite. Everything begins to fall apart quietly. You don't scream, you don't tell anyone. You just notice, somewhere between breakfast and the end of the day, that the world feels different. And that this different isn't coming from the outside, it's coming from within. Something in you starts getting tired of the character you've been playing. That voice you've always ignored starts getting louder, and even if you don't fully understand it, you know you can't silence it anymore. During this period, between months 1 and 2, it's not the big conflicts that hit the hardest. It's the details, the forced conversations, that co-worker who tells the same jokes, the hollow demands in your relationship, the traffic, the noise, the fake smiles. Everything that once felt normal now feels like sand in your shoes. You start getting irritated by people you once found tolerable, but the anger isn't really about them. It's about you, about the roles you accepted, the words you swallowed, the boundaries you never learned to set. The world becomes a cracked mirror, and every fragment reflects a hidden piece of you. That's when the first practice becomes essential. Every night, write down the 3 things that irritated you the most that day. Don't overthink it. Don't justify it. Just write. Slowly, you'll start seeing patterns. You'll notice that the traits you hate in others often reflect the parts you've rejected in yourself. The man you call arrogant may just have the confidence you've never had the courage to show. The lazy person might be echoing your own suppressed rage. The emotionally needy one who drains you could be mirroring your fear of asking for help. Every trigger is a point on the map, a map that leads straight to your shadow. This stage is uncomfortable because it destroys your personal myth. The image of being easygoing, mature, balanced starts to crumble. You see that in reality you were just used to silencing yourself, that your calm was a defense mechanism, not peace. In this chaos, something else appears, clarity. For the first time you begin to see yourself for what you are, no polish, no script, no act. And as much as it hurts, that's freedom, because you only begin to change when you stop lying to yourself. And that brutal honesty opens the door to the next stage, when you realize the man you became was invented to be accepted. After the silent collapse comes the hardest realization. You didn't get lost, you adapted. The man you are today wasn't built around your beliefs, but around what others would approve of. You didn't become functional, you became digestible. And it didn't happen in a single traumatic moment. It happened gradually, when you stayed quiet to avoid conflict, when you said yes but meant no, when you gave compliments just to stay included. The truth is, you started fading, strategically. Every gesture was calculated to keep your seat at tables that never truly saw you as equal. At this stage, the pain shifts shape. It's no longer irritation, it's shame. Shame for having betrayed yourself for so long, for confusing obedience with character, kindness with submission, balance with fear. You start to see that much of what you called your personality was really just censorship. Your actions were praised because they were predictable, because they didn't threaten anyone. And that's why the world applauded you, not for your truth, but for your utility. But now something inside you starts refusing that deal, and that refusal makes one thing clear. The shadow you've been hiding was created out of social survival. That's where the golden shadow comes in, the bright part of you you buried so you wouldn't shine too much. You're not afraid of failure. You're afraid of standing out, of drawing attention, of stepping out of line and being judged for it. A lot of men learn, very young, that being too smart pushes people away. That ambition is arrogance, that showing sensitivity is weakness. So they become the humble, nice, and mature version of themselves. But it's not humility, it's self-abandonment. It's internalized censorship. It's the shame of being truly seen. Because deep down you were taught that being yourself might cost you the only connections you had. And now comes the inner dilemma that almost breaks you. You can't keep faking it, but you don't know how to be real either. Because every time you tried to be authentic, someone punished you, someone labeled you, someone pulled away. And now, even as a grown man, you still hear that voice. Keep it down. Don't make it about you. Just stay the nice guy. But that nice guy is tired, and what begins to rise in his place is a new posture, silent, firm, unapologetic. It's the moment you stop justifying your presence, and that leads you to the point of no return, the day you finally stop asking for permission. This is the point of no return, the invisible line between the man who still explains himself and the one who finally stands his ground. It's not a special day. No one notices. There's no background music. Sometimes, not even you understand what's happening. But something inside you shifts. You hear someone trying to convince you, and for the first time you don't answer. You don't argue. You don't smile out of obligation. You just don't engage. And that absence is the birth of a new presence. At this stage, you start acting without an audience. You train even when you don't feel like it. You read without posting it. You study without showing it off. You work on what matters to you, even if no one's watching. Your change no longer needs witnesses. It needs discipline. The urge to prove is replaced by the urge to grow. And that makes people uncomfortable, because suddenly you stop being predictable. And those who saw you as available now see you as distant, not because you isolated yourself, but because you stopped asking for permission to exist. This is where a man becomes dangerous, because he no longer seeks applause. He seeks precision. He stops watering gardens that never gave him shade. He walks away from debates that only existed to inflate other people's egos. And the most fascinating part is this: the less he speaks, the more he hears, the more he observes. The more he sees that most people are too busy trying to look interesting while he's committed to being whole. Life stops being a stage. It becomes strategy. But this shift comes at a cost. People get confused. Some pull away. Others try to drag back the old version of you. And in that moment, you have to be ready to be misunderstood. Because no longer being useful doesn't make you cruel. It makes you just, with your time, with your energy, with your boundaries. And that's where the first real rupture happens: isolation. But not the kind that weakens you, the kind that heals you. In months 3 and 4, the process deepens, and the cost starts showing up. After you stop asking for permission, what many mistake for a breakdown begins: isolation. You start pulling away from groups, conversations, and places, not because you think you're better, but because something there no longer speaks to who you're becoming. The truth is, you don't choose to be alone. Solitude chooses you, and it doesn't arrive like rest. It arrives like a desert. During this phase, silence becomes uncomfortable. The days feel longer, the messages slow down. The presence of others, which used to fill your internal gaps, now sounds like noise. This is where many turn back. They self-sabotage, look for distractions, reopen relationships they had already outgrown, because they can't stand the emptiness that comes when you stop performing. But what looks like absence is actually preparation. In that vacuum, you begin to hear, not with your ears, but with your gut. This is when a man starts to identify, for the first time, what he truly feels. Not what he thinks he should feel, not what he was taught to feel, but what pulses when no one is watching. That's why the silence journal is so powerful during this stage. 10 minutes a day, writing without filters, without structure, without a mask. The page becomes a mirror. And you start seeing what was always there, buried beneath obligations, roles, and memorized lines. The most surprising thing is, the more you write, the less you feel the need to explain, the less you crave being understood, because you start to realize that much of your pain came from overexposure, from giving yourself to spaces that only knew how to take. And at this point, something shifts. You still feel the ache. It still hurts, but it no longer paralyzes you. Because a new kind of clarity begins to emerge, silent, strange, non-negotiable, and it sets the stage for the most decisive moment, the encounter with the monster that lives inside you. After embracing the silence comes the hardest part. Looking directly at what you've spent your whole life avoiding. It's no longer about other people, it's about you. Raw, unfiltered, without heroic narratives. Somewhere between months 3 and 4, the monster shows up. Not as a villain, but as a reflection. It takes strange forms. A rage you thought you'd outgrown, an old fear that still paralyzes you, a guilt disguised as responsibility. The name doesn't matter. The weight does. And the weight is all yours. Jung called this active imagination, a process where you don't run from your monster. You sit with it. You give shape to your anger, listen to your sadness, recognize your envy, your greed, your internal violence. Not as flaws, but as exiled parts of your system. It's like walking into a dark room in your soul and realizing everything you refuse to face is still there, waiting to be heard. You close your eyes, take a deep breath, and ask, "What are you trying to show me?" And for the first time, you actually listen without censorship. A man who's been betrayed, for example, usually faces 2 choices. Either he feeds his rage until it consumes everything, or he turns that pain into discernment. If he chooses the second path, he has to sit with what's left, the part that still wants revenge, the part that feels ashamed for being deceived, the part that believes he'll never be enough again. Each of these voices has something to say, and if you silence them, they sabotage you. But if you listen, they return your power, because the monster that's heard stops screaming. This phase is terrifying because you realize your worst version isn't that far from the surface. That your shadow self is smarter, stronger, and more honest than you ever imagined. And it doesn't want to destroy you. It wants to protect you. But it was cast out, censored, buried in your unconscious like an enemy. And now, after years in exile, it returns, not with rage, but with a proposition. Because deep down it holds what you need to keep going. But accepting that pact takes courage, because the next step is letting your old self die. Between months 5 and 6, the process changes temperature. If up until now you were clearing the ground, this is when the structures begin to collapse. Relationships you thought were stable start to fall apart. Old plans lose their meaning. Goals that once kept you up at night now seem small, maybe even ridiculous. You're not depressed. You're in transformation. But your ego doesn't know the difference. It panics, because everything it used to define itself is falling apart. This is the most confusing phase of the process. You start feeling like a stranger in spaces you once built. Your career, your routines, even the way you dress, all of it carries the weight of a character that no longer fits. And the scariest part is, there isn't a new identity ready to replace the old one yet. It's a state of suspension. You're not who you were, but not yet who you'll be. It's like being alive inside a body you no longer recognize as your own. Jung called this the death of the ego, and there's nothing poetic about it. It feels like being buried alive. You feel everything. The suffocation, the fear of never returning, the sense that you've lost your mind. But slowly, something begins to germinate. Like a root breaking through the ground from the inside. You realize the collapse isn't punishment. It's reconfiguration. And what's being born in silence doesn't need approval to exist. It only needs your presence. This phase isn't about doing. It's about not resisting. You have to allow your old self to die, without explaining, without trying to salvage what no longer serves you. Because the more you try to keep alive what's already gone, the more painful the transition becomes. This is the dark sea crossing, the starless night, the space between cycles, and only those who can endure this internal mourning without running will find what's waiting on the other side. Not a new role, but a new essence. After the death of the old identity, something happens. And it's not grand, it's quiet, almost unnoticeable. You wake up one day, look in the mirror, and realize your eyes have changed. They no longer shine for applause. They no longer shake in the face of rejection. They watch, they calculate, and they accept what used to destroy you, the fact that you are not, and never will be, what others project onto you. That's when the real man is born, not perfect, not immune, but whole. And more than anything, dangerous. Dangerous because he no longer needs to prove anything. He doesn't engage in pointless arguments. He doesn't try to convince anyone. He doesn't apologize for existing. He speaks less, but his presence grows. His energy is like the wind. You can't see it, but you feel it. And the strange thing is, he didn't improve. He simply stopped being a fabrication. And just that, just being real, is too much for a world that profits from disoriented, insecure, approval-addicted men. This man doesn't shout, doesn't dominate by force. But when he walks into a room, the energy shifts. He listens more than he speaks. He watches before he moves. He says no, without explaining. He's become selective with who gets his time, his words, his vulnerability. Because now he knows energy is currency, and he stopped funding emptiness. His decisions are cold, his actions are slow, and his peace has become protection. Not just of himself, but of what he's building. This is where you finally understand what really matters. That you never needed more approval, you needed more structure. That it wasn't lack of love that was making you sick. It was lack of boundaries. That the problem was never your intensity, your sensitivity, or your ambition. It was the way you tried to hide it, just to fit into shallow places. Now, there's no more acting. The character is dead, and the man who came back, he carries in silence everything no one was ever able to take from him. Some men change when they achieve something. Others, when they lose almost everything. But the ones who truly transform are those who decide to stop running and face what they've been avoiding for years, themselves. Because real transformation doesn't arrive with noise. It shows up through discomfort, through silence, through the courage to let die what was never real in the first place. Have you ever felt like you're carrying more than you should? Have you noticed you're living a version of yourself shaped by fear, convenience, or adaptation? And what if that weight you've been calling exhaustion is actually the grief of your own identity, warning you that it's time to bury what no longer serves? If any part of this video spoke to you, if you felt this wasn't just content, but confirmation of something that's already alive inside you, then don't run from it. Subscribe. Because this channel doesn't exist to motivate you. It exists to remind you that the path is lonely, but not impossible, and that the real version of you is waiting on the other side of resistance. The choice is yours, but time won't stop to wait for your decision.